have the house to myself today because Dave is down helping his mom with an appointment. And it's a gorgeous gray cloudy day, but still very muggy, so it's still hair up weather. But I'm gonna get through it. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot about maybe doing a little series on how to renew your awe of God. Reason being that you can kind of tell when someone is going through a hard time and their eyes become more and more downcast and their conversation is full of way more negative things than positive, that they're just not focused on the Lord, or maybe they just have lost the wonder of who God is. And so I don't think it would hurt us to just take maybe 3 or 4 videos and talk about how you can renew that. I actually got to watch someone do that in France when I was there one time teaching a pastor's wives conference. And this we invited the women of the church as well as the pastors' wives, because there just weren't that many pastors' wives in this area, so it was kind of a mixture, and it was wonderful. I've loved every single time I've been able to sit and mingle with those French sisters. They're just beautiful and loving. Anyway, I remember that I was teaching on the video that I did a while back about the God who sees, where my friend and I were both up at the same time in the night, and I didn't know and she didn't know that we were both up, but I was saying over and over and over for an hour, when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him, just one time after the next. And teaching in another country, I've done that several times, you have to have an interpreter. And at first I thought, well, I'll just cut in half what I'm teaching, but hungry women don't want that. They were willing to stay an hour if it took that long, and it probably did for each of the sessions. But I had this interpreter who I would say the verse that I said, and then she would say it. And then I said, and then God told me to say it again. And I said the verse, and then she said that. And then I said, and again, and then she said that. And by the time we had said that 3 times, we were all crying. It was just something, the Spirit of the Lord was in that room, and the power of just when you're instructed to do something that's a little bit unorthodox like that, but God is telling you, there's no doubt. It really was powerful for all of us. And after that session, I went outside. We were taking pictures out on the lawn, a bunch of us, and forgot my Bible inside, so I went in to get it. And there were 3 women sitting in this row near the back. One in the middle was just sobbing and wailing. And the other 2 were holding her arms because she was just going forward and back, and she couldn't barely breathe. And I was horrified. I thought, what's happened? And I ran over there and I said, what's happening? Is everything all right? Do you need anything? And she just looked at me and she just said, my Jesus, he's so beautiful. Oh, it touched me so deeply that God reached her in that room and opened her eyes anew to who he is. And he is beautiful. And you cannot stare at God and not be just completely in awe. And I did have my own situation like that too. When Dave was called to be a pastor, I was so happy for him because I knew he was going to be just a really loving, wonderful pastor. He has a shepherd's heart, and he's such a good teacher. But by default, that meant I was going to be a pastor's wife, and I was really nervous about that because all the other pastors' wives I'd ever had were these beautiful, gracious, quiet, soft-spoken, piano-playing women, and I didn't do any of those things. Gracious, oh my word. I'll probably do a little video on this, but I'm dehydrating apples and ginger, and I couldn't find the box for my mandolin yesterday, so I had to, be resourceful and just use a knife, and, this was the result, and this is like the 4th Band-Aid that I have on here. Dave's always maybe 2 minutes away from forbidding me from ever touching sharp objects again, because I cut myself all the time. So I always say my gift is making you feel gracious, so you're welcome. But all these pastors' wives I'd had were just these women you wanted to be, and I didn't know how I was going to ever jump into that group of women because I'm not like that. And I didn't have the wardrobe. Like I said, I didn't play the piano. I did play the guitar. And I had no idea at the time that was very Calvary Chapel-ish because we didn't know we were going to end up in Calvary Chapel. But I had a lot of trepidation. And I would sit there and think of all the times I'd just gone to coffee or lunch with my pastors' wives and all the questions I would bombard them with and how they always had a great answer. And I thought, Lord, what if I don't have anything to say? What if they asked me about a verse and I can't remember where it was. I mean, these women are going to look at me and feel completely deflated that I'm their pastor's wife. And of course, when you're, despondent like that, you run straight to the Christian bookstore. Actually, I don't think I'm allowed in the Christian bookstore anymore, because the last time I was at one, about half an hour from here, I was trying to find a Bible for a friend as a gift, and I walked around and around and around that store, and it took me forever to find the little section of Bibles. And I went up to the counter and I said, how come I can find 87 mugs and just this little section of Bibles? You guys need more Bibles. So I don't go in those stores anymore because I don't think I'm allowed. But all that to say, I ran to the local one, and I don't know what I was hoping to find. I really don't. But I just started looking through all these books for women. And one of them jumped out at me, and it was, where did I put it? It was this book right here. Fabulous book. It's The Hidden Art of Homemaking by Edith Schaefer. I love this book so much. I have 2 or 3 copies, I think. But I picked it up and I started thumbing through it, and this weird thought overcame me, because it is all about homemaking, but doing it as an expression of art and creativity unto the Lord and unto your guests and your family. But the funny thing is, there's not even a chapter in here on napkin folding, but there is on flower arranging and food and creative recreation and gardening and all that stuff. But for some reason, I remember standing there thinking, seriously thinking, not trying to be funny, thinking, wow, if I could learn how to be a really amazing napkin folder, then I could impress the women with my napkin folding abilities, and they might not notice the short of knowledge part of me, that maybe they won't mind that I don't have ready answers to them when they have these deep questions. And so I couldn't wait to get home and read this book. I was going to start right away. And like I said, there isn't a chapter in here on that, so just remember that. But I got home and I had the house to myself that day also. Made a cup of tea and sat in the chair and sat down, and I immediately started looking for the table arranging chapter. And I found it, and I read about 3 words, and I had this very strong impression to go back to the beginning. And I kind of brushed it off until it came stronger, and I thought, okay, all right, I'll go back to the beginning, because I just skipped all over the prologue, the introduction, skipped right over that. And it said, the first artist. What is art? Authorities do not agree, definitions differ. Who draws the line that separates? And then it has a list. And I thought, yep, that's pretty good. And I skimmed a couple pages. Oh yeah, that's good, that's good. And I went back again to the chapter I really wanted to read. And this time I heard a very distinct voice directing me to go back to the beginning. And so I sat down and I started reading. And she talks about how God is the first artist. And with that, being the truth, anything we do that's art flows from us being made in his image. But she begins to talk about the things we try to do as art, and then how God did it infinitely better. And she talks about how like we have I love my chimes, and they played in the background a few of these videos, but how we have our mobiles and our chimes, but God created the wind. And you think about the movement of wind on the trees, and how just the slightest little bit of wind will ripple through them and cause movement. And she went on to talk about the movement of the wind over a golden field of wheat, and how it ripples like a ballet. And she talked about the mobiles of spray that light through spray like thousands of diamonds blowing on invisible threads, what that looks like. And it just went on. And then she talked about the I'm so sorry, it's very hot out here. She talked about the how we would have these modern light shows. Remember going to laser shows way back when, 80s or whatever? And she said, but think about God's art show. Think about the sun as it comes up every day, his light show. And think about, let me let her say it. She says, have you considered the light shows that God created? Watch the moon come up over the mountain, as first the light in the sky softens the dark, and then a copper arc appears and quickly changes into an enormous ball, outlining the mountain and streaking the clouds with light. Watch it change in color and size as it mounts the sky. And she said, come out in the early morning for a more dramatic show. And she talked about the purple on the hills, and look at the streaks of lightning that split the black sky with zigzag patterns, or gasp over a northern light display. Watch a falling star cut through a night sky, and look down over a cliff to the white foam bright in the moonlight, washing the rocks with black wetness. And then she went on to talk about tropical fish, but I didn't get much further than that, because in those words, reminding me again of the utter power of our God to not just create the world with one word, which he did, but then to fill it with such beauty. And there's nothing that we can do with these hands that can come close to the beauty that he creates in nature all around us. And I was reminded all over again of God as the creator and how incredibly beautiful he is. And I dropped my book and I dropped to the floor and I laid face down on the floor, weeping for, I don't know if it was 10 minutes or an hour, I don't know. I just know I couldn't get low enough because I understood I was in the presence of the Creator, and my heart just was pounding the whole time. It was such a beautiful moment. And you know, I always say that Dave was anointed for ministry when he had two pastors come up to our church, and one was our pastor down in Vancouver while he was in seminary, and the other was a pastor up here that was ascending pastor for us. And they laid hands on him and prayed over him, and that was where he got his anointing. But I got my anointing for the ministry on my face on the floor that day. It was such a beautiful memory for me. So what I realized when I got up off that floor was that I don't have to have all the answers, because I can't have all the answers. But that I need to love the women, and more importantly, I need to love God and then express that to people. And really, that's all you need. If you're a mother and you have children, you know, you are that teacher to them, and the greatest thing you can give them is a glimpse of your love of God. So that was my moment of renewing my awe for God, and he really set my feet on the right path then and corrected my thoughts. But this sweet friend, this pastor's wife that I just get a kick out of, Sandy McIntosh, her husband is Mike McIntosh down in San Diego, and she was always one of my favorite teachers at the Pastor's Wives Conference. She told this story one time about being at the beach with her granddaughter Whitney, and she said that she got all their stuff set up on the beach, you know, the lawn chair and umbrella, all that stuff, the food and everything, towels. And then Whitney would go out with her little inner tube and just kind of play in the surf right there, right up near the beach. But that she would kind of start drifting a little bit more and more away from her. And so 3 or 4 times she had to get up and grab all their stuff and walk down the beach to where Whitney was. And finally, like about the 4th time, when he said, Granny, or Grammy, I think she calls her Grammy, Grammy, why do you keep moving? And what's so funny about that story is that God is never moving away from us. We are the ones, like little Whitney, that we're drifting down the beach. And so when we feel that God is far apart and we don't have that same sense of awe, what does the word tell us? It says, draw near to me and I will draw near to you. And that's really the first thing we need to do. We need to sit quietly and wait on the Lord. And it's a hard thing to do in this society. It really is, because we are just surrounded by noise. You know, and who of us ever gets in the car and doesn't turn on the radio? Or I listen to podcasts a lot. The minute I get in the truck, I have that going, and, you know, the whole way wherever I'm going. But we don't often enough sit and just in the stillness let God speak to us, which he wants to do. And just a little touch of that, I want to talk on that a little bit briefly, because I do say a lot, God spoke to me, or I heard God say, and people don't always understand what that is. We did have a couple that was leaving our church one time, and we had a little meeting. They wanted to, you know, tell us all the things we weren't doing right. That's how that goes. But he said to me in particular, he said, how do you think it makes her feel when you're always saying that God spoke to you about this or that, and she's never heard that? And first of all, I don't believe she never heard that, because God is speaking to us every minute of every day. One way or the other, God is speaking to you like he speaks to me. But the other thing I thought is, I don't tell people that because I want them to feel bad. I want them to be encouraged to sit and listen themselves so they can hear from God. Because if you don't tune in, if you're not purposeful, if you don't say, God, speak to me, I want to hear from you, and you're not in the Word and you're not praying, you're going to miss every whisper that he sends your way. I can't remember who said that quote. It was so sad. It was, God sends 10,000 truths that come upon us like a bird seeking inlet, but we are deaf to them, and so they sit a while upon the roof and then fly away. Isn't that the saddest thing? I mean, to think about God 10,000 times a day whispering to us, but we are shut up to the sound, and so those words drift away. It all comes down to living purposefully and having your walk with God be purposeful. When I was 31, Dave surprised me by getting me something I would never have gotten myself, and he knew that. He arranged for me to have painting lessons, and for Christmas he got me this big bucket of all these. He'd checked with the teacher and knew what I was going to need for the first project, and so I had all these brushes and oils in this yellow bag that I still have, and I was just overwhelmed with that gift because I never would have done that. And I was 31 years old before I realized I really did love to paint and draw, so I've been doing it ever since. But I remember we went to visit our friends in Arizona, Dan and Lisa, and I was up early and I was having my coffee, and I looked out their window at the terracotta tiles of the neighbor's house. You know how if you've been in Arizona, they all have that beautiful earthy naturalness. And I remember looking at the difference between the light and the shadow on the tile, and how I thought, I think I know exactly what colors I would mix to make that shade, but also to highlight it. And so I was kind of mesmerized, thinking if I could paint right now, this is what I do. And so Lisa came in and she goes, "What are you looking at? Is the neighbor's cat on the roof again?" And it just was such a point to me, an illustration of how we all look at things differently. I was looking with new eyes that had learned to see the world through light and shadow, because the contrast is what makes art so beautiful. And she wasn't seeing the beautiful light and contrast on the roof, because that's not what she does. So we're Christians, I don't expect the world to hear from the Lord. I really don't. But we are his, and we know he's speaking day and night. We read in Psalm 19 about, well, I always think of it as the sweeter than honey passage, but it's, and also I want to say, I never read the Message as though it was scripture, because it's poetry. So in my book, it's not a translation, it's poetry, but it is beautiful. And I was teaching that chapter once, and it said, unspoken truth is spoken everywhere, when talking about how the heavens declare the glory of God. And I really believe that to be true. But you can't read very far in scripture in either the old or the new and not know that God is constantly trying to speak to us. So what it is it's a purposeful way of going about your life and saying, I want to hear you in this, God. I want to hear you in this. And I think for me, the reason I've had so many interesting dreams and visions, which I'll share, and just things happen to me that I've been able to capture or hear, is because I am a writer, and I speak and teach, and God knows that I'm going to tell people about it. I mean, I kind of think, if you want to be his spokesman, open yourself up to it and really let him know that you want to share this with other people to be an encouragement. The world needs to know that there's a God who loves them, and as Christians, we need to know that he's speaking to us every day. So that's just the first little bit about renewing your awe. Get alone with God. Ask him to speak to you. We do not have because we do not ask, is what the scriptures say. And just tell him you want to hear from him. And then as you go about your day, don't just water ski over all the events of your day. We just, like when we read the Bible, sometimes I always think that people are either water skiing or they're deep diving, scuba diving. And we do that with our day. We don't stop long enough and think, when something is funny or poignant, is there a connection to God in that? Because so often that's how he's spoken to me. And when you're reading the word, read until something really hits you, and then stop right there and listen. Just listen for the voice of God. Let me ask you this. If one of your children said to you, I want to hear your voice, would you shut yourself up to them? Would you just clamp a hand over your mouth and refuse to talk to your child? You absolutely wouldn't. And again, are you a better parent than God? I know I'm not. So if we ask him to speak to us, you can bet that's a prayer request that he is going to honor and be delighted that you asked. He's not up there going, oh, she's so greedy. Yesterday she asked me for something else. This is something he wants to give you. I'm going to go wipe down now and probably get started on the second video. Because like I said, I have the house to myself. I like to do it when I have the house to myself. So I will talk with you shortly.